Imagine attending a festival where the dead are believed to return to the world of the living. Or watching young men willingly endure painful whippings without showing a single sign of fear. These traditions may sound unbelievable, but across Africa, they are part of cultures that have existed for generations. Africa is home to more than 3,000 distinct ethnic groups, making it one of the most culturally diverse places on Earth. The continent is filled with traditions that continue to fascinate the world. Today, we're counting down 11 African traditions that shocked the world. But behind every tradition lies a story. So, as we explore today's countdown, try to look beyond the initial shock and discover the fascinating stories behind these remarkable customs. And trust me, number 1 is unlike anything you've ever seen. Number 11, the Zulu Reed Dance. Every year in South Africa, thousands of young Zulu women gather for a ceremony that often leaves first-time visitors stunned. Wearing traditional attire that differs dramatically from modern Western standards, participants take part in a celebration of culture, heritage, and identity. To some outsiders, the clothing can be surprising and even misunderstood. But within Zulu culture, the ceremony is not considered an act of nudity. It is a proud expression of tradition that has been passed down through generations. Number 10. Spitting as a blessing. For most people, being spat on would be considered disrespectful. But among some Maasai communities in Kenya and Tanzania, spitting has traditionally been viewed very differently. Elders may spit while blessing newborn babies. Friends may spit before shaking hands, and important life events can even be accompanied by the gesture, rather than being offensive. The act is believed to transfer good fortune, protection, and blessings. To outsiders, it can seem shocking, but within the cultural context, it represents goodwill and respect. But while some traditions leave their mark through blessings, the next one leaves its mark directly on the skin. Number 9. Scarification. Long before modern identification documents existed, some African communities used the human body itself as a symbol of identity. Scarification involves creating decorative patterns on the skin through carefully controlled cuts. These marks could signify adulthood, courage, social status, family lineage, or beauty. Different communities developed unique patterns, each carrying specific meanings. It is, quite literally, wearing your story on your skin. Although the practice has declined in many places, its cultural significance remains an important part of African history. Number 8. Lip plates. In parts of Ethiopia, certain women have traditionally worn large decorative lip plates. The process begins gradually, with the lower lip being stretched over time. To many outsiders, the appearance can be startling. Yet, within the culture, lip plates have historically symbolized beauty, identity, and social status, a sign that a girl has become a woman, that she is ready for marriage. What one society views as unusual, another may see as a powerful expression of cultural pride. But while some cultures transform the body, others transform their entire appearance. Number 7. The Himba red ochre tradition. In the deserts of Namibia lives the Himba people, famous for their distinctive red appearance. Women cover their skin and hair with a mixture known as Ochre. The thick paste acts as a natural sunblock and a barrier against the intense desert sun and drying winds. The mixture naturally deters insects and also locks moisture into the skin, preventing cracking and dehydration in the dry climate. Because water is hard to find, the paste helps remove dirt and dead skin. When it's scraped away, the skin underneath is left clean and smooth. The mixture is made from butterfat and red ochre. The mixture protects the skin from the harsh climate, while also serving as a symbol of beauty and cultural identity. The result is a striking appearance that has fascinated photographers and travelers for decades. But if you think these traditions are surprising, the next few involve blood, dangerous challenges, and ceremonies that determine whether someone is ready to become an adult. Number 6. Bull jumping ceremony. Among Ethiopia's Himba people, becoming a man traditionally requires passing a remarkable test. Young men must run across the backs of several cattle, lined up side by side. They must complete the challenge successfully to demonstrate courage, maturity, and readiness for adulthood. Failing means waiting for another opportunity in the future. This is the Ukuli ceremony. Before the bull jumping begins, female relatives of the initiate request to be whipped by cattle herders, choosing to wear the scars on their backs as symbols of loyalty and devotions to their brother or cousin. The more scars, the deeper the love. For many outsiders, it seems incredibly risky. For the Himba, it marks one of life's most important transitions. Number 5. Maasai cow blood tradition. Few African traditions have attracted as much attention as the Maasai practice of drinking cow blood. The blood is collected carefully, without killing the animal, and is sometimes mixed with milk. Traditionally, it has been consumed during periods of recovery, after childbirth, or during important ceremonies. For warriors, it builds strength. The drink is believed to hold powerful nutritional and spiritual properties, while many people around the world find the practice shocking or extreme. For the Maasai, it developed as a practical source of nutrition in challenging environments. Number 4. Luo widow inheritance tradition. Among the Luo people of Kenya, widow inheritance has historically been practiced in certain communities. Traditionally, a widow could be inherited by a relative or designated member of the community, often called a jader, following the death of her husband. The practice was connected to family continuity, social protection, and preserving lineage. Today, attitudes toward the custom vary significantly, and many families no longer practice it. Yet it remains one of the most discussed traditions in East Africa. 3. Sharo Whipping Festival. Imagine standing before a crowd while another man strikes you repeatedly with a whip. Now imagine being expected to show absolutely no pain. This is the Sharo Festival, held twice a year during the dry season harvest. Practiced among some Fulani communities in West Africa, young men participate in public whipping contests as a demonstration of bravery and self-control. Showing fear or pain can bring embarrassment. Remaining calm earns admiration and respect. A man who has faced Sharo is a man you can trust. Number 2. Guérewol Courtship Festival. What if men competed in beauty contests, while women chose the winners? Among the Wodabe people of Niger, this is exactly what happens during the Guérewol festival. Young men spend hours applying makeup, decorating themselves, and practicing elaborate dances. They smile broadly to display white teeth and widen their eyes to appear more attractive. Women then select the men they find most appealing. If a woman sees a man she prefers, even if she is already married, she can choose him. To outsiders, it completely reverses many assumptions about courtship and beauty. It is a festival of freedom, of beauty, of male vulnerability, displayed not as weakness, but as art. And now, the tradition that many people consider the most shocking of all. Number 1. The Chewa Festival of the Dead. Imagine walking through your village when mysterious figures emerge from the forest. Their faces are hidden behind elaborate masks. Their movements seem almost supernatural. To outsiders, they may appear frightening, but to the Chewa people of Malawi, Zambia, and Mozambique, these masked dancers represent something deeply meaningful. The tradition, known as Guérewol, is associated with ancestral spirits and important community ceremonies. The performances combine music, dance, storytelling, and symbolism passed down through generations. In the past, when Chewa community member dies, the deceased's body is carried to a sacred location where it is purified with water, cleansing them of their wrongdoings before they journey to the afterlife. For many first-time observers, it feels like stepping into another world. The dead, to the Chewa, are never truly gone. And that is exactly why it remains one of Africa's most fascinating cultural traditions. From blessing people with spit to honoring ancestors through masked ceremonies, Africa's traditions are as diverse as the continent itself. At first glance, some of these customs may seem strange or even shocking, but when viewed through the lens of history, culture, and community, a different picture emerges. These traditions tell stories of identity, stories of survival, stories of values passed from one generation to the next. They remind us that cultures around the world often develop unique solutions to the challenges they face, and what may seem unusual from one perspective can carry profound meaning from another. Subscribe to Inside Africa Chronicles for more untold stories from across Africa, because Africa has thousands of stories the world rarely hears.